Plague, a rare but serious bacterial infection that can affect multiple mammalian species, including humans. The cause of plague is a bacteria scientifically known as Yersinia pestis. This pathogen was an absolute terror in the Middle Ages, claiming the lives of millions in a catastrophic event now known as the Black Death. Even in the modern day, though rare and treatable most of the time, plague still claims thousands each year. It is truly the perfect candidate to kick off a series about terrifying diseases. So, why is this disease in particular so dangerous to us humans? And how did it once wipe out half the globe? Let's find out. A great deal of the severity behind plague comes from its tendency to clinically manifest itself in 3 different forms: bubonic plague, septicemic plague, and pneumonic plague. All of you history buffs out there probably know that the Black Death was caused primarily by bubonic plague, which is actually the most common and least severe type. The main and most infamous symptom of this plague is the formation of buboes. These are, in simple terms, swollen lymph nodes that typically present in the armpits, groin, and neck. Horrifyingly, they can get as large as a chicken egg and can be very tender to the touch. Just take it from me, I used to get swollen lymph nodes in my neck due to chronic sinus infections, and they can hurt badly. Oh, and just so we are all on the same page here, a lymph node is a small, bean-shaped structure that is part of the body's immune system. Lymph nodes filter various substances through lymphatic fluid, including lymphocytes, also known as white blood cells. So essentially, the reason these little beans can get inflamed when you are sick is because they are filling up with angry lymphocytes looking for a fight. The more you know, am I right? Other symptoms of bubonic plague are quite typical for a bacterial infection: fatigue, muscle aches, chills, and possibly a fever. Now, if a person gets unlucky or is left untreated, plague can spread throughout the bloodstream. This is when it becomes septicemic. Symptoms include fever and chills, extreme weakness, abdominal pain, diarrhea and vomiting, high fever, headache, bleeding from the mouth, nose, rectum, or under the skin, shock, and gangrene. Do yourself a favor and please don't look up gangrene unless you have a stomach for bad trauma. Anyway, while this might seem totally disgusting and horrifying, it isn't the most dangerous form of plague. If Yersinia pestis happens to settle in a person's lungs, it becomes pneumonic. It's quite uncommon, but very dangerous, as it rapidly progresses and allows the disease to spread via cough droplets. Symptoms include cough with bloody mucus, difficulty breathing, nausea and vomiting, high fever, headache, weakness, and chest pain. As I said, this type of plague progresses rapidly and can leave a person with respiratory failure or septic shock within 2 days of infection. If not treated within a day of symptom appearance, pneumonic plague will usually be fatal. As severe as plague can be, remember, Yersinia pestis is a shell of its former self thanks to advances in modern medicine. Before I touch on that further, I'd like to answer the question of how a bacterial infection managed to do so much damage during the Middle Ages. From the years 1346 to 1353 AD, bubonic plague swept across Eurasia and North Africa with a vengeance. This was the Black Death. It is the most fatal pandemic recorded in human history, causing the deaths of 75 to 200 million humans total. The mortality rate at the time was estimated to be around 50%, a coin flip. Furthermore, throughout the entire pandemic, 30% to as much as 60% of the European populace is thought to have been wiped out by this singular pathogen. Globally, best guesses assume that the Black Death claimed the lives of half of all humans on the planet. Yikes. For a modern-day comparison, that's like if the recent C-19 pandemic took the lives of 4 billion people. How could one bacteria infect so many people? The key is transmissibility. You see, Yersinia pestis infects a host through the bite of a flea. Specifically, it spreads through the bite of an oriental rat flea. This doesn't tell the whole picture though. The basic system of infection goes like this. In order for a human to be infected by a flea bite, the flea must have first fed on an infected rodent. Coming into contact with infected blood via ingestion or a cut can also lead to disease transfer. In fact, even cats and dogs can contract plague if they get bit by a carrying flea or eat an infected rodent. As far as historians know, the reason Yersinia pestis spread so quickly and devastatingly through Eurasia and Africa in the Middle Ages was due to rodent infestations, bad sanitation, and lack of antibiotics. At the time, humans had a lousy understanding of medicine, and no one was able to realize that it was fleas that were really driving transmission of bubonic plague. In grade school, I remember learning how many plague doctors believed the disease was spreading through miasma clouds in the air, while others thought it was spread by rats. Alas, the true vector was tiny little fleas no one was thinking about. They would hitch rides on rodents, hiding in trading caravans, and plague would spread further and further throughout the world. When you combine this with the total lack of antibiotics in the Middle Ages, you might be able to guess why so many people fell to this pandemic. To add insult to injury, no one even knew what the heck had wiped out half the globe for hundreds of years. Believe it or not, Yersinia pestis was not even discovered until 1894 by Alexander Yersin, a Swiss-French physician and bacteriologist from the Pasteur Institute. He made this discovery during an epidemic of the plague in Hong Kong. Before moving on into the modern day once again, take a listen to this immersive, first-hand account of the Black Death, written by a real person in 1348. A great mortality destroyed more than a third of the men, women, and children. As a result, there was such a shortage of servants, craftsmen, and workmen, and of agricultural workers and laborers, that a great many lords and people, although well endowed with goods and possessions, were yet without service and attendance. Alas, this mortality devoured such a multitude of both sexes that no one could be found to carry the bodies of the dead to burial. But men and women carried the bodies of their own little ones to church on their shoulders and threw them into mass graves, from which arose such a stink that it was barely possible for anyone to go past a churchyard. As remarked above, such a shortage of workers ensued that the humble turned up their noses at employment and could scarcely be persuaded to serve the eminent, unless for triple wages. Instead, because of the doles handed out at funerals, those who once had to work now began to have time for idleness, thieving, and other outrages. And thus the poor and servile have been enriched, and the rich impoverished. As a result, churchmen, knights, and other worthies have been forced to thresh their corn, plow the land, and perform every other unskilled task if they are to make their own bread. With plague causing such sweeping damage to humanity at one point, you might think it should be impossible to control or treat. Well, fortunately for us all, this isn't the case. It's really quite simple these days. All you need is good old antibiotics. If you catch the disease early, that is. Regardless, if you are diagnosed with plague, you will most likely be sent right to the hospital. Among the antibiotics doctors may use to treat you are gentamicin, doxycycline, ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, and chloramphenicol. Once you get some of these babies in your system, everything should turn out okay, most of the time. A quick side note here though, be mindful of ciprofloxacin and levofloxacin. They are known as Cipro and Levaquin typically, and can cause serious muscle issues and even meningitis if your body reacts badly to them. There have even been multiple warnings issued by the FDA over the years. If nothing else, take it from me, as I have direct experience. Also note that while there is a vaccine available for plague, it is normally only administered to people who have high exposure to Yersinia pestis on a recurring basis. Anyway, if antibiotics really stop such a nasty infection in its tracks, why are thousands of people still losing their lives every year, you may ask? Well, keep in mind most of you watching this probably live in the first world. Countries in this designation have made amazing advances in sanitation and medicine, making prevention and treatment of plague easy for most people. However, there is a large swathe of the globe still considered developing, and these advances in medicine and sanitation are often absent. Simply put, developing countries are where the majority of fatalities come from every year. It's truly a shame, but that's the current way of things. Hopefully one day, things will change. And finally, the full picture of why I placed Yersinia pestis in my top list of most terrifying diseases has been painted. It's not really an ailment you need to lose sleep over these days, but nonetheless, it still exists and did take the lives of half of humanity at one point. Don't underestimate a bacteria that caused an event called the Black Death. Alrighty everyone, I hope you enjoyed listening, and I hope this video has taught you something about one of humanity's most notorious biological enemies. If you did enjoy it, give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I've got a whole list of wicked pathogens I plan on adding to this series, so be sure to stick around. Stay safe, and stay clean.